A young billionaire walks into a fast food place, and a poor little girl looks at him and says, "Would you buy me a snack? I don't want to starve like my mum." He freezes at what he hears and makes a surprising decision. Enzo's footsteps echoed through the empty penthouse apartment. Click-clack, click-clack. Italian shoes against the white marble floor, a sound that had become part of him like his own breathing. Silence was his most faithful companion, broken only by the occasional clink of glasses when he poured himself a glass of wine after a productive day. The penthouse was just like him, impeccable, practical, and distant from everything. Large floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a perfect picture, beautiful to admire, yet protected by an invisible barrier. From way up there, people looked like tiny dots moving without direction, exactly how he preferred to see them. From a distance, Enzo adjusted his silk tie in front of the minimalist mirror by the entrance. His reflection returned the same image as always, a man in his early 40s, dark hair perfectly trimmed, a defined jawline, brown eyes alert to every detail. The navy blue suit was tailored, like everything else in his life. Meticulously planned. Perfect, he murmured to himself, although there was no one around to hear or disagree. His phone buzzed. A new message from the office. The corporate center project needed urgent adjustments. Clients unhappy with details in the lobby. Enzo smiled slightly. Problems he could solve. Equations with correct answers. Decisions without emotional nuances. His territory. The private elevator took him straight to the garage. His car, a sleek German sedan, was waiting. A silent engine, leather interior, everything in its proper place. Enzo's life worked like one of those Swiss mechanisms, precise, predictable, productive. The city was waking up as he was already on his way to another meeting. Traffic flowed well at that carefully calculated time he chose for his outings. Avoiding crowds was a science he had mastered. Enzo didn't hate people. He simply didn't know what to do with them beyond professional interactions. His parents had left too soon, leaving a boy who learned to build fortresses instead of bridges. The radio reported the latest news while he mentally reviewed the day's projects. Numbers, deadlines, contracts, the language he understood. He parked in his private spot near one of the quieter cafes in town. It was his morning ritual, a perfectly made coffee before plunging into the office routine. The barista already knew him. A double espresso, no sugar, to go. No unnecessary chatter. He was leaving the place when something interrupted his meticulously planned flow, a strange sensation on his leg, like a small tug. He looked down and saw something that didn't belong to his calculated routine. A small child, messy hair, worn-out clothes, huge eyes looking up, fixed on him. "Mister, could you buy me a snack?" The thin, hoarse voice pierced the layers of isolation Enzo had built over the years. Instinctively, he took a step back. The coffee nearly spilled. "I don't want to starve like my mum," said the child, her deep brown eyes locked on Enzo's. The words hung in the air between them, too heavy for an ordinary morning, too heavy to be ignored, too heavy to remain. Part of only her life and not his. Enzo felt paralyzed. Something about that simple, brutal sentence broke through all the barriers he had built. His eyes scanned the small figure in front of him. There were dark circles beneath those big eyes that shouldn't be there at such a young age. The hair, maybe fair beneath all that dust, fell in uneven strands over a thin face. Her nails were dirty. Her feet were bare. Something in Enzo's stomach tightened. A strange, uncomfortable feeling. Guilt. Pity. He couldn't name it. He checked his watch. He was already delaying his precise schedule. He should just go on to the office. Social problems were for social workers, not for billionaire architects with busy agendas. "Mister," the small voice persisted. He looked at her again. Without a word, Enzo pivoted on his heels and went back into the diner. The child waited, outside, watching through the glass as he spoke with the attendant, pointing to some items on the counter. Her little fingers tapped against the window, as if fearing he might vanish. Minutes later, Enzo walked out with a paper bag and a large cup of juice. He awkwardly knelt down to her level. His expensive suit touched the dirty sidewalk, but for the first time it didn't seem to matter. "Here," he said, holding out the bag. "There's a sandwich, some fruit, and cake. And juice. The child's eyes lit up briefly, a flash of joy on a face that seemed to have forgotten how to smile. Her small hands took the bag with reverence, as if it were precious treasure. "Thank you, mister," she said, voice still hoarse but stronger now. Then, without another word, the child clutched the bag to her chest and ran down the street, her bare feet deftly avoiding puddles and obstacles. Within seconds, she had disappeared into the growing morning crowd. Enzo remained there, kneeling a moment longer. Something had changed, though he couldn't pinpoint what. Those words, "I don't want to starve like my mom," echoed in his mind as if carved in concrete. He stood up, adjusted his suit, and resumed his path to the office. The coffee in his hand was already cold. The day that began like every other had taken an unexpected turn. As he drove, he tried to resume his mental routine, numbers, projects, meetings, but the image of those big eyes and that brutal statement lingered like a crack in a perfect wall. That night, returning to his silent apartment, Enzo stopped before the large windows. He looked at the city below, at the tiny dots in motion. For the first time in a long while, he didn't see just anonymous dots. He wondered how many were hungry, how many were abandoned children, how many had mothers who died, leaving them alone in the world. And for the first time in years, the silence of his apartment didn't feel comforting. It felt empty. A week passed since the encounter with the child. Enzo tried to resume his routine, but something had shifted. The silence of his apartment, once comforting, now felt accusatory. In meetings, he found himself distracted, remembering those huge eyes and the phrase he couldn't forget, "I don't want to starve like my mom." On that Thursday, a light rain fell over the city, the kind that doesn't seem heavy but soaks you to the bone. Enzo dismissed his driver. He wanted to drive alone, to think. He took a different route than usual. Without realizing it, he was searching, even if he wouldn't admit it to himself. He was driving down a narrow street when he saw it, a small makeshift shelter between two large dumpsters. Cardboard boxes stacked in a nearly ingenious way, forming a structure that tried with little success to protect from the rain. And underneath it, curled up like a small animal, was her Enzo. Stopped the car. The rain was beginning to dissolve. The cardboard. Through the foggy windshield, he watched the child trying to save her shelter, pulling more boxes from a nearby pile, replacing those that had grown soggy. There was a practical determination in her movements that didn't match her age. He got out of the car without taking an umbrella. In seconds, his hair and suit were drenched. He approached carefully, as if she were a bird that might fly away at a sudden move. "Hi," he said, feeling strangely awkward. The child looked up, surprised. For a moment, her face showed fear, the kind of fear children should never know. Then recognition replaced the fear. "You're the snack man," she said, a small smile forming at the corner of her mouth. That recognition did something odd in Enzo's chest, a tightening followed by an inexplicable warmth. "It's raining. A lot. Your shelter won't hold up," he said, looking at the cardboard that was already giving way under the rain's weight. She shrugged, a gesture far too adult. "I'll just make another. There's plenty of cardboard behind the market." The practical simplicity of her answer hit Enzo in the gut. While he worried over details of million-dollar projects, this child calculated the resistance of cardboard against the rain. "Are you hungry?" he asked, though the answer was obvious. Her arms were even thinner than the last time he'd seen. She hesitated, pride wrestling with necessity. "A little," she finally admitted. "Come on, let's get something to eat. It's too cold out here." She looked at her few belongings, a tattered backpack and something that looked like a teddy bear missing an arm, as if wondering if they would be safe. "You can bring your things," Enzo added, understanding her concern. The ride to the diner was silent. In the car, she looked even smaller, sunk into the leather seat. She clutched her backpack and the teddy bear to her chest like a shield. Her eyes took in everything. The buttons on the dashboard, the soft upholstery, the little crystal hanging from the rearview mirror. A completely new world. He chose a different diner this time, cozier, less crowded. When they walked in, the warmth enveloped them, and Enzo noticed how she trembled despite trying to hide it. "What would you like to eat?" he asked as they sat at a table in the back. Her eyes scanned the menu with colorful pictures as if it were a treasure. "Can I pick anything?" Anything, he confirmed. She pointed to a hamburger with fries and a chocolate milkshake. Kids' food. Something normal. It was easy to forget, seeing her there, that there was nothing normal about her situation. While waiting for the food, Enzo tried a cautious approach. "What's your name?" "Leah," she replied, her fingers playing with the edge of the table. "What about you?" "Enzo." "Enzo," she repeated as if testing the sound. "Different. Name? It's Italian?" "Like pizza?" she asked, and for the first time Enzo saw a genuine flash of childhood in her eyes. "Yes, like pizza," he smiled, surprising himself. The food arrived, and Leah devoured it as if there were no tomorrow. Enzo had to remind her to slow down so she wouldn't get sick. Watching her was a mix of fascination and horror. How does a child end up like this? "Your mom," he began, unsure of how to approach the topic. "You mentioned her the other day." Leah's face hardened slightly, but not completely. "She died about a month ago, I think." The simplicity of the statement was more painful than any cry. "I'm sorry," Enzo said, the words feeling insufficient. Leah shrugged again, that adult gesture that should never belong to a child. "We'd been living on the streets since I was really little. Mum always said one day she'd find a job and we'd have a house, but then she got sick." Her words came out between bites of the hamburger. "She coughed a lot, blood too. Then one day she just didn't wake up." Enzo felt a knot in his throat. Tuberculosis, probably. A treatable illness that still killed people on the streets, while he signed million-dollar contracts to build skyscrapers. "What about your dad?" "Never met him," she answered simply. "Mom said he was handsome, but disappeared before I was born." "No other relatives? Aunts, uncles, grandparents?" Leah shook her head while sipping the milkshake. "It was just us. Mom said her family didn't want to see her anymore because of me, I guess." Another knife to Enzo's heart. The casual way she talked about her abandonment was unsettling. "And after your mom? After that, no one came to help? Social workers, police?" "Some lady from the government came. She wanted to take me to a place with other kids, but the older kids there beat up the little ones. Mrs. Mary from the popcorn cart's son stayed there and came back all bruised, so I ran away." Enzo stayed silent, absorbing the information. A broken system, a child surviving on her own on the streets. And no one seemed to notice or care. Except now him. When they finished eating, it was still raining. Harder now, the cardboard shelter certainly no longer existed. "Thanks for the food, mister." "It was the best I've ever had," Leah said, already preparing to climb down from her chair. "Wait," Enzo said, not knowing exactly what he would do next. "It's raining hard. Your shelter's probably destroyed." Leah looked at the window, confirming what he said. "I'll find another spot. There's an underpass nearby. If I grab a good spot, it won't get so wet." The image of her alone under an underpass was unbearable. "What if," Enzo began, surprised at what he was about to suggest. "What if you came to my place just until the rain stops?" Leah looked at him with a mix of hope and distrust that broke his heart. "Your place? Does it have a TV?" Such a childlike, normal question made Enzo smile. "Yes, there's a TV and hot water for a bath and a dry bed." Her eyes sparkled but then darkened. "I can't pay." "You don't have to pay, it's an invitation." She still looked suspicious. "Why, people don't do things for free." "Because it's raining," Enzo replied, feeling inadequate. "And because no one should sleep on the street. Especially a child." Leah thought for a moment, her little face a mask of adult considerations. Finally, she nodded. "Only until the rain stops." On the way to the car, she held Enzo's hand. A small, perhaps instinctive gesture, but it sent an electric current through him. Responsibility, trust, things no one had ever placed in him beyond the professional realm. He drove extra carefully on the wet streets, conscious of the precious passenger in the seat next to him. In the rearview mirror, he saw Leah fighting sleep, her head lolling to the side and jerking back up. "You can sleep," he said softly. "It'll take a while to get there." "You're not taking me anywhere else?" she asked, her voice already blurred by fatigue. "No, I'll be here when you wake up." Satisfied with the answer, Leah let herself surrender to exhaustion, clutching the armless teddy bear. And so on that rainy night, Enzo did something he never imagined. He brought home a child who used to sleep on cardboard. Enzo's apartment took up the entire top floor of the building. When the elevator doors opened, Leah stood still, eyes wide, as though she had stepped into a fairy tale castle. "This place is all yours?" she asked, voice almost a whisper. "Yes," Enzo replied, realizing for the first time how his home might seem to eyes that had only known cardboard and underpasses. The white marble gleamed under soft lighting. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city below, now a sea of shimmering lights in the rain. Elegant furniture in shades of grey and black, contemporary art pieces on the walls, built-in technology that responded to voice commands. Leah walked on tiptoe as if afraid to break the floor. She touched the surfaces with her fingertips, the soft leather of the couch, the polished glass of the coffee table, the texture of an abstract sculpture. Her face reflected wonder and something else, the brutal contrast between her world and this one. "You live here alone?" she finally asked, hugging her damaged teddy bear to her chest. "Yes," Enzo answered again, noticing for the first time how strange that word sounded. Alone. An echo in a space too large for just one person. "Aren't you scared?" The question caught him off guard. "Scared? Of what?" "Monsters," she replied seriously. "Big places have more spots for monsters to hide." For a moment, Enzo didn't know what to say. Then something in his chest opened and he smiled. A genuine smile, the first in a long time. "Well, now I have you to warn me if you see any monsters." That seemed to satisfy her. Her small shoulders relaxed a bit. "I guess you could use a warm bath," he suggested. Noticing how her clothes were still damp from the rain, her eyes shone. "A hot bath? For real?" Enzo felt another pang in his chest. How long had it been since this child had a hot bath? He'd been so busy building towers of glass and steel that he never stopped to think about who lived in their shadows. The guest bathroom was larger than many apartments. Leah stood in the doorway watching the whirlpool tub as if it were an enchanted lake. "It's like a little pool inside a house," she remarked in awe. Enzo turned on the faucets, adjusting the temperature. Scented foam began to form on the water. "I'll go get a towel and—" He paused, realizing the problem. "You'll need clean clothes." Leah looked at her worn-out clothes, a faded pair of jeans, several sizes too big, held at the waist by a cord, and a t-shirt that once might have been red. "These are all I have," she said simply. Enzo thought quickly. "Wait here," he said, leaving the bathroom. He returned minutes later with one of his softest t-shirts. It would be like a dress on her, but it would do until they found something better. "You can wear this for now. Tomorrow we'll buy you new clothes." Leah touched the Egyptian cotton fabric as if it were made of clouds. "It's so soft," she murmured. "I'll leave you to it," Enzo said, suddenly aware of how strange this situation was. "Take your time. There's shampoo and soap over there. I'll be in the living room if you need anything." While waiting, Enzo did the most impulsive thing of his adult life. He called his assistant. "I need you to find a nanny, immediately." "To start tomorrow morning." The voice on the other end of the line didn't hide its surprise. "A nanny, sir?" "Yes. Someone competent, discreet, available full-time." "Sir, do you have a child now?" The question hung in the air. Enzo realized he had no answer. What exactly was he doing? Sheltering a street child for a night, for longer? He hadn't thought beyond the present moment, unheard of for someone whose projects were planned years in advance. "I have a temporary situation," he finally answered, "and I need professional help." After hanging up, he felt strange, like he was in someone else's dream. From the bathroom came little sounds of delight as Leah discovered the simple pleasure of a hot bath. Half an hour later, she appeared in the living room, practically swimming in Enzo's white t-shirt, her damp hair revealing a blonde shade that had been hidden under layers of grime. She looked like a different child, younger somehow, more childlike. "Best bath of my life," she declared with a smile that revealed a missing baby tooth. "Are you sleepy?" Enzo asked, noticing her heavy eyes battling fatigue. She nodded, not resisting. Enzo took her to the guest room. Another enormous space for someone so small. The king-size bed with Egyptian cotton sheets seemed to swallow her. "It's so soft," Leah commented, sinking into the mattress. Not knowing exactly what to do, Enzo pulled the covers up around her. An awkward but sincere gesture. If you need anything during the night, my room is right there, he pointed to the hallway door. Just call me. Leah looked at him with a seriousness that didn't belong to a child. Thanks for not leaving. Me in the rain. You don't need to thank me, he responded, feeling strangely moved. Good night, Enzo, she said, eyes already closing. Good night, Leah. The next morning, the nanny arrived, a woman named Helena with kind eyes and steady hands. Enzo explained the situation vaguely, a child who needed temporary care while he handled legal issues. Helena didn't ask many questions. She only nodded with the wisdom of someone who'd seen it all. Days turned into weeks. The temporary situation took on a more permanent shape. Children's clothes, toys, and school supplies began accumulating in Enzo's apartment. He hired a tutor to assess Leah's educational level and start basic lessons. Helena took care of meals, hygiene, and routine. Meanwhile, Enzo remained immersed in his work. He left early, returned late. By the time he arrived, Leah had already had her bath, her hair neatly brushed, dressed in colorful pajamas. The contrast with the child he had found under cardboard was shocking. "Enzo's home!" she would shout at the sound of the elevator, running to the entrance. He would greet her with a contained smile and nod. His routine didn't allow more than that, or so he told himself. "Look what I did today," she would say proudly, showing him colorful drawings, houses with smoking chimneys, trees bigger than mountains, smiling flowers, and always two figures, holding hands, one big and one small. "Very nice," he would respond, hanging up his jacket and briefcase. The drawings began appearing all over the apartment. Helena stuck them on the refrigerator with magnets. Then they showed up on the hallway, walls. Later, framed in the living room. Vibrant colors invading the gray and black monologue that dominated the space. Gradually, the apartment changed. A colorful throw over the leather couch, tiny slippers beside large ones at the entrance, a plastic cup with unicorns next to crystal, glasses, children's books on shelves that once only held architecture treatises, the transformative power of childhood, redesigning the space with the same subtlety and persistence as water over stone. Every night, even arriving late, Enzo would stop at Leah's door. He would watch her steady breathing, the teddy bear, now with an arm sewn back on by Helena, firmly clutched in her embrace. And he felt something strange, something he couldn't name. Before he knew it, he was already adjusting his routine. He started coming home earlier on Fridays, then on Wednesdays too. Though he still avoided lengthy interactions, it was impossible not to notice how Leah lit up the place with her presence. "Why all these big windows if you never look outside?" she asked one day, while he reviewed plans in his home office. The simple question made him pause. How long had it been since he'd appreciated the view he'd paid millions for? When was the last time he really saw the sunset over the city he helped build? That night, without warning, he sat down beside her on the living room floor. Leah was drawing, tongue sticking out of the corner of her mouth in concentration. "What are you drawing?" he asked. The smile he received in response was like a small sun rising. "Our home," she replied simply. That was when Enzo realized his apartment of concrete and silence had turned into a home, without him even noticing the exact moment it happened. The first change in Enzo's routine was almost imperceptible. A meeting moved from 6 to 5 in the afternoon. An earlier breakfast, so he could take Leah to her first swimming lesson. Small adjustments that together created pockets of time that hadn't existed before. One ordinary Thursday, he arrived. Home at 4 in the afternoon, something unthinkable just weeks prior. The elevator's sound announced his arrival, and as usual, Leah came running. "You got home early," she exclaimed, eyes shining with surprise. "I finished everything faster today," he replied, not mentioning that he had delegated 3 meetings and postponed a business dinner. Helena appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing a floral apron. At odds with the minimalist surroundings, "Mr. Enzo, we didn't expect you so soon," she said, a discreet smile on her lips. Leah was about to start her afternoon drawings. "Drawings?" he asked, realizing how little he knew about the child's daily routine in his home. "Yes," Leah answered excitedly, grabbing his hand. "Come see." Without resistance, Enzo let himself be led to the dining table, where colored pencils, markers, and blank sheets were neatly arranged, a whole world of color that had never been part of his life before. I spend 2 hours drawing. Helena says it's my creative time, Leah explained with the seriousness of someone discussing an important project. And what will you draw today? A park, she promptly replied, with lots of trees and a duck pond. Have you ever seen real ducks, Enzo? The question was simple but carried weight. Enzo remembered his childhood in Italy, afternoons with his grandfather feeding ducks in a small town square. Yes, he said, when I was a kid. What are they like? Leah asked, already seated at the table, a yellow marker in hand. Without thinking too much, Enzo pulled up a chair and sat next to her. They have soft feathers, flat beaks, and they make a funny sound. Quack, quack. Leah laughed at his clumsy imitation. Can you draw one? Enzo hesitated. He hadn't drawn anything in decades except technical designs, but something in Leah's eager expression made him pick up a pencil. I'll try, he said, leaning over the paper. Helena, watching from the doorway, quietly returned to the kitchen, a discreet smile on her lips. Enzo's first duck was terrible, disproportionate and too stiff. Leah, however, clapped her hands enthusiastically. Draw a whole family, she demanded. Daddy duck, mummy duck, and the baby ducks. Without noticing, an entire hour passed. The imaginary park came to life with ducks, trees, a bench where 2 figures, one big, one small, were watching the scene. That's us, Leah explained, pointing. You took me to see the ducks. Enzo felt a strange lump in his throat, an emotion he couldn't name. The next day he arrived home at 5, then 4:30. The following week he reserved his entire Friday afternoon. At his office, his assistant watched, perplexed, as changes rippled through the previously unshakable schedule. Family commitment, Enzo simply explained, providing no further detail. Afternoon drawing sessions became a ritual. Then came evenings of improvised movie nights, with the living room TV showing cartoons Enzo never imagined watching. Seated on the Italian leather couch, Leah curled up beside him, hugging her teddy bear, and he found himself laughing at childish jokes, rooting for princesses in distress. This is my favorite, Leah said during a movie about a girl who befriends a blue monster, because even though they're different, they really like each other. Enzo nodded, recognizing the hidden wisdom in her comment. Between floor drawings and couch movies, the distance between them shrank. Leah no longer ran to show him what she'd done just to get a polite nod. She also reached for his hand or nestled perfectly under his arm when they sat together. Enzo, who'd never been one for physical contact, found himself tucking a stray hair behind her ear or accepting spontaneous hugs without discomfort. One Saturday morning, while making pancakes, a new addition to his routine, Leah asked, "Why didn't you ever get married, Enzo?" The question caught him off guard, the spatula pausing mid-air. "How do you know I never married?" "Helena said you're single. Is it because you don't like anyone?" Enzo thought for a moment. "I guess I was always too busy building buildings to build relationships," he answered, surprising himself with that honesty. Leah pondered the response, carefully flipping her pancake with intense concentration. "But now you have time for me." It wasn't really a question, but there was a vulnerability hidden in it. "Yes," Enzo confirmed. "Now I have time for you." The smile he received in return lit up the entire kitchen. The next week, during one of their drawing sessions, Leah worked with unusual focus. She kept the paper hidden under her arm, smiling mysteriously whenever Enzo tried to peek. "It's a surprise," she said, tongue poking out of the corner of her mouth in concentration. When she finally revealed it, Enzo felt the world stop for an instant. The drawing showed 2 figures holding hands, one tall wearing a suit, the other small in a dress. Above them, a colorful rainbow, and at the bottom of the page, written in uneven but careful letters, "Enzo, Daddy at heart." "Helena helped me with the letters," Leah explained, watching his reaction closely. "Do you like it?" Enzo couldn't answer immediately. A knot formed in his throat, and for the first time in decades he felt his eyes grow damp. That little colored paper, with its crooked lines and bright colors, felt more precious than all the architecture awards in his office. "I love it," he finally managed, his voice slightly hoarse. "Can I call you that?" Leah asked, visible tension in her small shoulders. "Daddy at heart?" Enzo pulled her into a hug, feeling the fragility and strength in that little body. A child who had lost everything, yet had enough love to give. Yes, he answered simply. That night, after Leah fell asleep, Enzo stayed in the living room, gazing at the drawing now secured at the center of the fridge with a star-shaped magnet. Daddy at heart, 4 words that redefined who he was and who he could be. A title no amount of money could buy. His phone buzzed, an urgent email about the financial center project. For the first time, Enzo ignored it. There were more important matters now. The space of affection required presence, and he was finally ready to occupy it. Enzo's office occupied the top floor of a mirrored building downtown. From there, he could see almost everything. The skyscrapers he'd helped build, the skyline he'd redrawn with his designs. The Man Who Shapes the Cityscape, a magazine, had once called him. Today, however, he wasn't looking outside. His gaze was fixed on a folder on his desk. Adoption process, requirements, and documentation. The decision hadn't been sudden, even though the folder on his desk had only appeared that morning. For weeks, the idea had been growing in him, like a building that exists first in sketches and then gradually gains substance and form. He could no longer imagine his life without Leah. The drawings all over the house, her laughter in the air, her endless questions about how things worked. Even their silences had changed. They were no longer empty but filled with a presence that made everything more alive. His phone buzzed. A message from Helena. Leah asking what time you'll be back. She's making something special to show. You. Enzo smiled. The days of coming home to an empty apartment felt like they belonged to another life, lived by another person. Sir? His assistant called from the door. The lawyer is on the line. Enzo nodded, picking up the phone. Martin, I need guidance on something personal. The conversation lasted almost an hour. Legal issues, requirements, psychological evaluations, home visits. A long bureaucratic road, but nothing that intimidated him. Enzo had always been the kind who, once deciding on a course of action, pursued it with iron determination. We can start today, the lawyer said at the end. But are you sure? This is a lifelong commitment. Enzo glanced at the framed photo on his desk, a new addition. It showed him and Leah at a park, both sitting on a swing. She with a huge smile, he with a half smile, unused to expression, but genuine. Helena had taken it on a sunny Sunday. I'm sure, he replied, surprised at how firm his voice sounded. The drive home felt different that day. He bought flowers, something he'd never done before. White roses, the florist assured him, were perfect for special occasions. He also stopped at a bakery and chose a chocolate cake with strawberries, Leah's favorite. When the elevator opened into his apartment, Helena came to greet him, looking intrigued by the flowers and the cake. Special occasion, Mr. Enzo? The most special of all, he replied, leaving his jacket on the rack. Where's Leah? In her room, finishing a surprise for you. Shall I call her? Please. While Helena went to fetch Leah, Enzo set the table in the living room. He placed the flowers in a crystal vase he'd never used, positioned the cake in the center, added plates and utensils. Simple gestures he never imagined himself doing. Enzo, Leah's voice arrived before she did, vibrating with excitement. You're home early. She ran in, a piece of paper in her hands, her blonde hair loose and bouncing, her bare feet barely touching the floor. When she saw the decorated table, she stopped suddenly. Is it someone's birthday? Not exactly, Enzo answered, feeling a nervousness no million-dollar negotiation had ever caused. It's a different kind of celebration. Leah looked at the flowers, the cake, then at him, tilting her head in curiosity. What are we celebrating? Enzo knelt down to her level, a gesture he'd learned to do over the last few weeks, literally meeting her eye to eye when it mattered. I want to ask you something very serious, he began, voice softer than any employee of his would recognize. Do you like living here? Leah nodded vigorously. It's the best place in the world. There's hot water, a soft bed, and you're here. The simplicity of her answer struck him in the heart. And would you like to keep living here forever? Her eyes widened. Forever, not just until the rain stops? Enzo smiled at the callback to his initial promise, made so many weeks ago. Forever. Officially. Like adopted? She asked, a voice almost a whisper. Helena, watching from the kitchen doorway, brought her hand to her mouth, eyes already brimming with tears. "Yes," Enzo confirmed. "I've spoken to people who know about this sort of thing. There's a lot of paperwork, some visits we'll have to do. It'll take time, but if you want, I'd like to be your dad. Not just at heart, but on paper too." The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but felt eternal. Then, without warning, Leah threw her arms around Enzo's neck, squeezing so hard she almost knocked him over. "Yes, yes, yes," she repeated, face buried against his shoulder. Enzo hugged her back, feeling her small body tremble with a joy too big to contain. Over Leah's shoulder, he saw Helena wiping away tears, a huge smile on her face. When she finally pulled away, Leah's eyes were shining, cheeks flushed. "So now we're really a family?" she asked, a raw vulnerability in her voice. The question hit Enzo like a revelation. Family. A word he had lost the meaning of so long ago. It had become just a distant memory of a boy who lost his parents too soon. And now that word was reborn, filled with new meaning. "Yes, Leah," he answered, voice cracking. "We are really a family." She smiled, then remembered the paper she still held in her hand. "I almost forgot. I made this for you." It was another drawing, different from the others, more elaborate, done with extra care. It showed a house, not the penthouse apartment, but a home with a yard, trees, and a swing. In front of the house, two figures, and above them, in Leah's careful if uneven handwriting, aided by Helena, "Our family." "It's beautiful," Enzo said, lightly tracing the colorful lines with his fingertips. "I worked on it all day," she explained proudly. "I wanted to give you something special because, her voice faltered a bit, "because you saved me from the rain." Enzo shook his head, feeling his heart swell in a way he never thought possible. "No, Leah," he said gently, "it was you who saved me." That night, after Leah finally fell asleep, exhausted from so much emotion, Enzo remained awake, gazing through the window at the city below. The same view as always, but now seen through different eyes. Each light represented a story, a family, a life. And now he was part of that tapestry in a new way. The choice of the heart was simple in the end. So simple he wondered why it had taken him so long to see it. The idea came on an ordinary night, while Enzo watched Leah sleep. The adoption process had begun, bringing with it a slew of forms, interviews, and social worker visits. One such visit had unsettled Leah more than usual. After the social worker left, she stayed quiet, drawing with an unusual intensity. "What are you drawing?" Enzo asked, sitting beside her on the carpet. "The other kids," she replied simply. "What other kids?" "The ones still on the street, like I was." Her small fingers kept coloring. "The government lady said a lot of kids don't get lucky like me." Those words stayed with Enzo. That night, while Leah slept hugging her mended teddy bear, he stayed awake, thinking about the chance that had brought them together. One different day, one different street, and they never would have met. How many other children were out there, sleeping on cardboard, unseen by anyone? The next morning, he arrived at the office with a different energy. His team noticed. Everything about him seemed different lately. The perfectionist, distant boss now occasionally smiled, arrived later, left earlier, and had photos of a blonde child on his desk. "Cancel my morning meetings," he instructed his assistant, "and call Marcos and the social projects team." 2 hours later, a dozen architects gathered around the large conference table while Enzo presented his vision. "A shelter center," he explained, projecting preliminary sketches on screens. But unlike any other, not a warehouse for kids, not a cold institution, a temporary home that actually feels like home. The architects exchanged glances. Social projects weren't new to the firm. There were always a few in the works. Good, for corporate image and tax breaks, but never with the boss's direct involvement. "I want a place where I'd be comfortable putting my own daughter," Enzo continued, the word daughter slipping out naturally, prompting more surprised looks. "Open spaces, natural light, greenery, safety without feeling like a prison, dignity." Marcos, the director of social projects, cleared his throat. "What's our approximate budget here?" Whatever it takes, Enzo replied. This is personal. I want it to be exemplary. In the following weeks, the project that would be called Root House began to take shape. Every morning, Enzo set aside 2 hours for it, before dealing with anything else. At night, he brought sketches home and spread them on the dining table. What are these drawings? Leah asked one night, curious about the papers Enzo was reviewing. A special project, he answered. A house for kids who don't have a place to stay. Her eyes widened. Like me before? Yes, like you before. Leah fell silent, thinking for a moment, then dashed to her room. She returned with her box of colored pencils and sat beside Enzo. Can I help? Enzo smiled, clearing some papers to make room for her. Of course you can. Actually, you're the expert here. That night marked the start of an unusual collaboration. A renowned architect and a child from the streets merging perspectives to create something new. Leah studied the technical drawings, tilting her head, asking surprisingly insightful questions and offering suggestions none of the firm's architects had considered. The rooms can't have too many beds crammed together, she said, doodling over one sketch. The older kids beat the younger ones when nobody's looking. Enzo took note. Smaller rooms, maximum 3 children per room, separated by age. And the windows have to be big, Leah insisted, with a view of trees, not walls. Why? Enzo asked. Leah stopped drawing, looking at him with that seriousness that occasionally surfaced on her child's face. Because kids need to see the sky, she said simply. When you live on the street, the sky is the only pretty thing you get for free. Enzo felt a lump in his throat. He jotted down, wide windows throughout, views of the sky and green areas. Leah's role in the project grew naturally. Helena watched in awe as the two of them sat together every night, absorbed in their shared undertaking. Leah drew what she deemed important. Swings, slides, trees to climb, cozy nooks for reading. Enzo translated those visions into architectural language, adding structure and feasibility without compromising the essence. One Sunday morning, while making pancakes together, Leah carefully measuring ingredients, Enzo minding the stove, she asked, "What's this house for the kids going to be called?" "I was thinking Root House," Enzo answered, flipping a pancake in the air, making her laugh. "Why root?" Enzo considered the question. "Because roots are the base, the beginning. They support and nurture, allowing something to grow strong." Leah bit her lip, processing the idea. "Like you did with me." Enzo's heart skipped a beat. "Yes," he said softly. "Like I hope I did with you." She smiled, satisfied, and went back to carefully measuring the flour. At the office, the team noticed the shift in Enzo. The perfectionist boss remained demanding, but there was a new dimension to his demands. When reviewing residential projects, he now asked, would a child be happy here? For public buildings, how would a child navigate this space? Root House became the highest priority. Enzo had already purchased a large plot on the outskirts of the city, far enough to have space and nature, but close enough for easy access. The approval process, which usually took months, was accelerated by his influence and the fact he was privately funding the entire project. One afternoon, he arrived home with something special, materials to build a scale model. "We're going to build our house in miniature," he explained to Leah, who watched in fascination as he brought out small pieces of cardboard, paints, and glue. Helena helped cover the dining table with old newspapers, and the three spent the rest of the day cutting, gluing, painting. Leah was in charge of the outdoor areas, creating tiny trees, swings, and slides with surprising patience. Enzo built the main structure, explaining every architectural decision so she could understand. "See these openings in the roof? They let natural light in but protect from rain and excessive heat. And here's where the bedrooms will go," she asked, pointing to one section. "Yes, each with its own window facing the garden. This bigger space will be the library." Leah's eyes sparkled. With lots of storybooks, hundreds of them. As the model took shape, so did Leah's excitement. Root House was no longer just Enzo's project, it was theirs. At some point, Helena snapped discrete photos. Enzo and Leah, heads bent together in concentration over their creation, paint smudges on both sets of fingers. When the model was done, they placed it in a place of honor in the living room. Visitors were surprised to see the sophisticated architect's apartment dominated by a project clearly made with a child's help. But Enzo displayed it with more pride than any of his international awards. The start of construction was a big event for Leah. Wearing her favorite overalls and a small yellow hard hat Enzo had specially made for her, she attended the groundbreaking ceremony. "When will it be ready?" she asked, watching the big machines preparing the site. "In a few months," Enzo replied. "Buildings take time." "Like families?" she asked, taking his hand. Enzo smiled, once again surprised by the wisdom hidden in her simple questions. "Yes, exactly like families." Mornings at the apartment gained a new routine. Enzo, who once barely had coffee, now sat at the kitchen table every day. Leah, still in pajamas, prepared toast while he sliced fruit. Helena supervised from a distance, smiling at how the man who once seemed made of concrete and silence was now laughing at a child's morning stories. "Are we going to see Root House after school?" Leah often asked. Whenever possible, Enzo rearranged his schedule to take her to the construction site. The workers already knew her, some saving little treasures for her, a pretty stone, an oddly shaped piece of wood. The construction foreman kept a special photo diary to show Leah the progress each visit. At home at night, the two would review the photos together. "Look, they've built the foundation for the library. And here's where the tall swings you wanted will go." Sometimes Enzo caught her looking at the model with an expression that seemed beyond her years, as if she could see, beyond the miniature representation, all the lives that would be transformed there. "What are you thinking about?" he asked once, finding her like that. "About how things would have been if Mom had known a place like this," Leah answered quietly. "Maybe she wouldn't have gotten sick." Enzo knelt by her, hugging her shoulders. "That's why we're building it, right? So other moms and kids can have better chances." She nodded, still gazing at the model. "Can I do something special for the house? Something that's just mine?" "Of course, what do you have in mind?" "I want to make a mural," she explained. "A big drawing on the wall for the kids to see when they arrive." "I think that's a perfect idea," Enzo replied. Over the next few days, Leah worked intensely on her secret project. She asked for large sheets of paper, new paints, consulted art books Helena brought from the library. She worked in her room with the door closed, allowing only the occasional glimpse of her progress. When she finally finished, she called Enzo and Helena for the grand reveal. It was a huge panel made of several sheets taped together. It showed a stylized tree with deep roots and branches that reached up to the sky. Among the branches were tiny, colorful figures representing children of various ages. At the base, in careful letters Leah had written by herself, was a phrase, "Here you can grow roots and then fly." Enzo felt his heart expand again in that still surprising way. That small person, who had once trembled in the rain, was now creating a welcoming message for others. "It's perfect," he said, voice tight with emotion. "Will it go in the entrance?" Leah asked hopefully. "It'll go in the entrance," Enzo confirmed, "and we'll enlarge it to cover the entire main wall." Her eyes went wide. "The whole wall, really?" "Really. It'll be the first thing kids see when they arrive." That night, after Leah fell asleep, Enzo stayed in his home office, reviewing the final details of the Root House project. Every line, every dimension had been planned not just with the precision of an award-winning architect, but with the heart of a newly discovered father. The project that began as a response to one child's story had become so much more, a new purpose, a new direction for his life and career. And at its center was Leah, the girl who asked for a snack one ordinary morning and without knowing gave him so much more in return. As he closed the blueprints, Enzo smiled to himself. They had created a dream with a solid foundation, a dream grounded in the love that had grown between them, and wings for all the possibilities yet to come. Lawyer Martin Goldstein's office exuded seriousness and tradition. Dark mahogany shelves lined with law books, framed diplomas on the walls, the scent of leather and old paper. Enzo, usually at ease in formal settings, felt strangely nervous. "The adoption process isn't simple," Martin explained, leafing through a thick folder. Especially considering these unconventional circumstances, the girl didn't go through official channels initially. "I'm aware," Enzo replied, tapping his fingers against his leg. "But that shouldn't matter." She needs a home and I can provide it. Martin adjusted his glasses, studying Enzo with the experienced eyes of someone who'd seen many enthusiastic clients waver when faced with bureaucracy. It's not that easy. The system aims to prioritize the child's best interest, but it operates via rigid protocols we'll have to navigate carefully. The list of requirements seemed endless. Enzo's psychological evaluation, a social study of his home environment, interviews with social workers, background checks, verification of income, reports on Leah's adaptation, documentation of the child's history. The fact we don't have official records of her biological parents may complicate things, Martin continued. We'll need to prove abandonment, possibly request DNA tests to rule out any biological connections. DNA? Enzo frowned. What difference would that make? Bureaucratic procedure, Martin sighed. The system is wary of direct adoptions, fearing child trafficking or illicit deals with biological parents. Leaving Martin's office, Enzo carried an even thicker folder and a mix of determination and apprehension. Until now, his life had functioned like his architectural projects. He'd sketch a plan, apply resources, and watch results emerge as predicted. But adoption didn't follow that clean logic. It was full of human variables, subjectivities, and red tape. The following days established a new routine. In the morning, work at the office. In the afternoon, meetings with social workers, lawyers, psychologists. Enzo, the man who had reshaped the city's skyline, now faced a bigger challenge, proving he could be a father. The first home visit was particularly tense. The social worker, a middle-aged woman named Teresa, arrived promptly at 4 in the afternoon. Grey hair pinned in a severe bun, a worn leather briefcase, eyes that seemed to see beneath appearances. "Mr. Mancini," she greeted formally. "Thank you for your punctuality." Helena had prepared the apartment, though Enzo insisted it should be normal how we live every day. Leah, usually talkative and energetic, was unusually quiet, wearing her favorite dress and neatly combed hair. "And you must be Leah," Teresa offered a slight smile, crouching to meet the girl's gaze. "Pleased to meet you." Leah waved timidly, instinctively reaching for Enzo's hand, which he squeezed reassuringly. The visit lasted 2 hours. Teresa examined every room, taking notes about Leah's room, now furnished with children's furniture, books, toys, and colorful drawings on the walls, checking the pantry and fridge, noting adaptations in the bathroom, a small step stool, towels within her reach, kids' products. While Leah showed Helena her favorite books in the living room, Teresa interviewed Enzo in the kitchen. "You have a demanding career," she began, consulting her notes. "How do you plan to balance that with fatherhood?" "I'm already balancing it," Enzo replied. "I've reorganized my schedule, delegated more responsibilities at the office, and I finish my day earlier. My priorities have changed." Teresa studied him, her expression unreadable. "Are these changes permanent?" An initial enthusiasm that may cool off with time and challenges. The question hit a nerve, exactly what Martin had warned him about. The need to prove this wasn't just a whim, a fleeting charity from a wealthy man. "I'm not adopting Leah to feel good about myself or for altruism," Enzo said, words coming out more intensely than planned. "I'm adopting her because I can't imagine my life without her anymore. She changed me." Something seemed to soften in Teresa's eyes. "In what way?" Enzo took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "I used to live for work, for building things, skyscrapers, fortunes, reputation. I thought that was enough. Leah showed me that building a life, a relationship, is far more complex and far more rewarding." Teresa made a note, her face neutral again. "What about the future, Mr. Mancini? Have you thought about the teenage years? Are you prepared for those challenges?" "Honestly," Enzo gave a half smile, "probably not, just as I wasn't prepared for her to enter my life. But I'm willing to learn, to grow with her. I'm not aiming for perfection. I'm aiming to be the father she deserves." When Teresa finally left, her handshake felt less formal. "Mr. Mancini, one more thing," she said at the door. "I've seen many wealthy men try to adopt for the wrong reasons. I see something different in you. Keep it up." Weeks turned into months. Each step of the process seemed to lead to another. Forms generated more forms. Interviews led to more interviews. The folder in Martin's office kept getting thicker. "Is it normal to take so long?" Enzo asked on a rainy afternoon, watching the city through the lawyer's window. "Actually, it's going pretty fast given the circumstances," Martin replied. "Your influence and resources help speed some steps, but we can't skip any." Enzo nodded, thoughtful. "I know it shouldn't be about money or influence," he said. "I just don't want Leah to suffer from uncertainty. How is she dealing with it?" "Surprisingly well. She's resilient. Stronger than many adults I know," Martin smiled. "Kids usually are." "What about you? How are you handling it?" Enzo shrugged. "One day at a time. I learned that from her." Back at the apartment, Enzo found Helena at the door, looking worried. "Mr. Enzo, Leah isn't feeling well. She had a light cough this morning, but now she's running a fever." Enzo's heart raced. He dropped his folder and jacket in the hallway and went straight to Leah's room. She lay curled under the covers, face flushed with fever, eyes glassy. "Hey, little one," he said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Heard you're not feeling well." "Hi," she answered, voice raspy. "It's nothing. Just a cold." Enzo touched her forehead. She was burning up. "Helena, could you call Dr. Ramirez? Ask him to come right away." An hour later, the family doctor finished examining Leah. "A strong flu," he diagnosed, putting away his tools. "Nothing serious, but she'll need rest, plenty of fluids, and close monitoring of the fever. If it spikes, give her the fever reducer I'll prescribe." After the doctor left, Enzo insisted Helena go home, promising he would take care of Leah personally. He prepared a tray with light soup, lemon honey, tea and medication. He sat beside her, helping her eat. "You don't have to stay," Leah murmured between spoonfuls of soup. "I know you have work." "Nothing's more important than you," Enzo replied simply. As night wore on, the fever fluctuated. At one moment, it seemed to subside. The next, it returned. Enzo changed the cold compresses on her forehead, offered sips of water, adjusted her pillows so she could breathe better. Around midnight, he called the office and cancelled all the next day's meetings. His assistant, now used to the new version of Enzo, a man who prioritized family, didn't question it. "Please feel free to reschedule everything," he said, "and tell Marcos to go ahead with the investor presentation without me." The early hours brought a temporary worsening. The fever climbed, causing chills that shook Leah's small body. Enzo kept her hydrated, gave the fever reducer on schedule, and never left her side. Seated in an uncomfortable armchair by her bed, he watched every movement, every breath. At some point, he dozed off briefly. He woke with a start to a low sob. Leah was awake, silent tears rolling down her feverish cheeks. "Hey, what's wrong?" he asked, immediately leaning closer. "What if you can't stay with me?" she whispered, voice thick with tears. "I've never had a dad. Now that I have one, I don't want to lose you." Enzo's heart clenched painfully. She wasn't talking about the flu, but the adoption process, the interviews, the documents, the bureaucracy that kept her future in limbo. "You're not going to lose me, Leah," he said, hugging her gently, feeling the heat of her fever through her thin pajamas. "I promise, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere." She closed her eyes again, calmer now, clutching her pillow. He stayed there, certain that the love they'd forged was unbreakable. No system, no bureaucracy could stand against what they'd built together. When dawn finally broke, the fever subsided. Leah slept peacefully, her breathing even, her face less flushed. Enzo, exhausted but relieved, watched the first golden rays of sunlight touch the city's buildings outside the bedroom window. The city he helped build looked different now, from the eyes of a changed man. His phone buzzed. A message from Martin. "News about the process. Can we meet today?" Enzo looked at Leah, still asleep, and replied, "Not today. My daughter is sick and she needs me." Daughter. The word emerged naturally, without hesitation. It didn't matter what the papers said yet. In his heart, the truth was already established. In the following weeks, the process continued. More visits, more evaluations. Teresa returned twice, always observing with keen eyes how Enzo and Leah's relationship was progressing. On her last visit, she found them in the kitchen, baking a cake together, flour all over the floor, laughter filling a space once silent. "Mr. Mancini," she said before leaving, "may I offer an unofficial piece of advice?" Sure, Enzo replied. Keep being exactly who you are for her. The system can be slow and complicated, but eventually it recognizes what's real. The final psychological evaluation was particularly intense. Over 2 hours, a psychologist specialized in adoptions questioned Enzo about his motivations, expectations, fears, and hopes. What will you tell her about her biological mother in the future? Asked the specialist. The truth, Enzo answered without hesitation, that her mother loved her but lived in difficult circumstances. She did her best, and she'll always be part of Leah's story, even if she's not around anymore. What if she wants to know about her biological father? I'll help her search if that's what she wants when she's older. I'm not afraid of the truth or her past. The psychologist nodded, writing something down. Mr. Mancini, what has changed in your life since Leah arrived? Enzo thought. For a moment. Everything, he finally answered. Before I built structures, now I build memories. Before I measured success by the awards on my wall. Now I measure it by her smile in the morning. I used to live for work. Now I work to live with her. The psychologist smiled for the first time during the interview. That's all I needed to hear. Later that afternoon, back at the apartment, Enzo found Leah and Helena working on a puzzle in the living room. Upon seeing him, Leah ran for a hug, as she did every day, as if each reunion was special. How was your talk with the question lady? She asked as he lifted her into his arms. It went fine, he said, spinning her gently, making her giggle. Really fine, in fact. That night, after Leah went to bed, Enzo got a call from Martin. I have news, said the lawyer, his tone unreadable. Can we talk tomorrow at my office? Is it good news or bad news? Enzo asked, heart pounding. A pause on the other end. I think you'll want to hear it in person, Martin replied. That night, Enzo barely slept. He got up several times to check on Leah, as if afraid she might disappear. During one of those times, he stopped at her doorway, watching the small figure curled beneath a colorful quilt. The month since he found her sleeping on cardboard felt like both a moment and a lifetime. The transformation was visible not just in her, now healthy, safe, blossoming, but also in himself. The man of concrete and silence now knew the transformative power of love. Whatever Martin's news, Enzo knew one thing for sure. The bond they had formed was stronger than any legal document. The promise he made to Leah during her fever wasn't just comforting words. It was a commitment that would define the rest of his life. The plain manila envelope on the lawyer's desk seemed too simple to hold something so valuable. Martin smiled discreetly as Enzo opened it with slightly trembling fingers. 1, 2, 3 pages with official seals, signatures, stamps, legal language that, to Enzo, held all the poetry in the world. Is this it? He asked, voice rougher than usual. It's approved? Martin nodded. Officially approved. As of today, Leah is your daughter for all legal purposes. Enzo stayed silent, absorbing the impact of those words. So many months of waiting, so many forms, so many nights. Awake imagining possible hurdles. Now it was all summed up in 3 pieces of paper. Congratulations, Enzo. Martin extended his hand. You're officially a dad. Dad. The word still felt strange and wonderful. That feeling which began impulsively on a rainy night, taking. In a child who slept on cardboard, now had a name, a document, legitimacy. What should I do now? He asked, carefully placing the papers back in the envelope. Martin smiled. Go home. Tell her. The rest will come naturally. On the drive back to the apartment, Enzo moved slowly, mind flooded with memories. He recalled the first time he saw Leah, so tiny, asking for a snack, the night he brought her home. The drawings that gradually brought color to both his white walls and his life. Her fever, the promise he made in the middle of the night, the official papers finally arriving. He parked the car and in the elevator tried to control his emotions. He didn't want to fall apart in front of her. He wanted to convey security, stability, everything a child who had already lost so much deserved. When the doors opened, he found Leah and Helena in the kitchen, baking cookies. Flour on the girl's nose, dough stuck to her fingers, laughter filling the air. Enzo! Leah exclaimed when she saw him, running with flour-covered hands for a hug. He lifted her up, not caring about the flower on his Italian suit. "I have news for you," he said, sitting at the kitchen table with her on his lap. Helena watched them. From the counter, already suspecting what was coming, her eyes glistened with controlled emotion. "Is it about the papers?" Leah asked, suddenly serious. Even at her age, she understood exactly how important this process was. "Yes," Enzo confirmed, taking the envelope from his inside pocket. They finally arrived. Leah looked at the envelope, then at Enzo's face, searching for clues. He tried to keep a neutral expression, but a smile broke through, and his eyes, those eyes that rarely showed emotion, were visibly brimming with tears. "Did it work?" she whispered. Enzo nodded, unable to hide his smile anymore. "It worked. Leah, you're officially my daughter now." For a moment she stayed still, processing the information. Then, with a shriek of joy, she threw her arms around his neck, getting flour everywhere. Helena let out a small, happy sob from the counter. "I knew it," Leah exclaimed. "I knew it would work out." After the initial excitement passed, Leah slid off Enzo's lap and ran to her room. She came back minutes later with a folded piece of paper. "I made this for you," she said, handing him the drawing, "for when the papers arrived." Enzo unfolded it. 2 stick figures holding hands, one tall in a suit, one small in a dress. Between them a big red heart. Above, in colorful letters, "My family." "It's beautiful," he said, voice choked. "I'm going to make another one right now," she declared. "With our real names, Leah Mancini. Is that my name now?" "That's your name now," Enzo confirmed. After Leah went to bed, Enzo stayed in the living room, alternating between looking at the drawing and the legal papers. He didn't just want to finalize the adoption, he wanted to commemorate it in a special way, creating a memory Leah could keep. The next morning at breakfast, Enzo made a proposal. "I have a surprise for today. Let's celebrate somewhere special." "Where?" Leah asked, eyes shining. "You'll know it when you see it." The drive was filled with Leah's excited guesses. A park, the zoo, that restaurant with a carousel inside. Enzo just smiled, driving through familiar streets until stopping in front of a simple diner with red booths and a Formica counter. Leah looked out the car window, confused for a moment. Then her face lit up with recognition. "This is it," she exclaimed, pointing. "This is where you gave me my first snack." Enzo nodded, moved that she remembered. That moment had changed both their lives forever. They walked in hand in hand. The diner hadn't changed. The same stainless steel counter, the same smell of frying oil, the same murmur of conversations. Certainly not the kind of place Enzo used to frequent, but now for them, it was sacred ground, the point of origin of their shared story. They sat at the same table where, months ago, a wary child had eaten her first safe meal in a long time, and a lonely man had taken his first step out of isolation. "What would you like to eat?" Enzo asked, exactly as he had the first time. Leah smiled, following the memory's script. "Hamburger, fries, and a juice box," just like back then. The server took their order and smiled at them, unaware she was witnessing a private ritual. While they waited, Leah swung her legs under the table, now wearing colorful sneakers, not barefoot as before. Her once matted, dull hair now fell in shiny blonde curls, framing a healthy face. "You look different now," Enzo commented. "You do too," she promptly replied. "You smile more." The food arrived, and Leah tackled the burger with the same enthusiasm as before, though with better manners. Small changes reflecting the path they'd traveled. Between bites and sips, they exchanged calm smiles. The contrast was stark, the nervousness and distrust of that first meeting replaced by easy companionship. "It's official now, Leah," Enzo said quietly. "We're a family." She reached her small hand across the table and held his. "It's the best snack of my life," she declared, with the kind of profound simplicity only children have. At the end of the meal, the server brought out something Enzo had secretly ordered, a small cake with a single lit candle. "It's not my birthday," Leah observed, puzzled. "It's our family's birthday," Enzo explained. "It deserves a candle for you to make a wish." Her eyes sparkled. She leaned over the cake, pondered a moment, then blew out the candle with a wide grin. She didn't say aloud what she wished for. She didn't need to. She already had everything she wanted. On the way home, Leah dozed off in the back seat, hugging the teddy bear that now had 2 arms. Enzo watched her in the rearview mirror from time to time, still marveling at the daily miracle of having her in his life. The official document was safely stored in a folder. Important, no doubt. But the real proof they were a family was in the small moments like these: a shared snack, a candle blown out, a wish not voiced because it was already reality. Spring brought new colors to the city. Public flower beds bloomed. Trees replaced their bare branches with fresh green leaves. But for Enzo and Leah, the most significant renewal happened in the outskirts of the city, where a once vacant lot now held the skeleton of a building rising. Day by day, Root House was no longer just drawings and models. It was becoming real. Brick by brick, beam by beam, the project came to life. The main structure was up, revealing the shape of what would be not a bureaucratic institution, but a place that genuinely felt like a home. That Saturday morning, as they had done every Saturday for the past few months, Enzo and Leah drove to the construction site. From the back seat, Leah carried her architect folder, a blue folder with colorful clasps containing new sketches and notes written in her careful, if uneven, handwriting. "Do you think they've installed the windows in the east wing? Bedrooms yet?" she asked, leaning forward eagerly. "I want to see if they have a good view of the trees." "Probably," Enzo replied, admiring her unwavering enthusiasm. Marcos said they made good progress this week. Marcos, the social projects director at Enzo's firm, personally supervised the Root House construction. Initially, he treated it like any other corporate social project. Now, he was as invested as his boss, often staying late to ensure every detail matched the plan and Leah's drawings. When they arrived, the construction site was bustling with activity, even on a Saturday. Enzo had offered bonuses to speed up the work, not out of impatience but out of awareness of the project's social impact. Every day gained meant more children helped, more lives potentially changed. "Miss Leah," called Jorge, the foreman. As soon as he saw them exit the car, "You came at the perfect time. We're installing the swings on the playground." Leah's face lit up. The swings had been her most insistent contribution. "Swings so high you can see the sky," she repeated countless times in planning meetings. Wearing their small yellow hard hats, Leah's decorated with stickers, father and daughter followed Jorge around the site. Workers waved. Some stopped what they were doing to greet the little architect, as the entire crew now called her. "We did it just like you drew," Jorge explained, showing the sturdy metal structure. "See, high enough to look beyond the walls, but still safe." Leah ran to check it, circling the structure with a critical eye that made the workers smile. There was something contagious in how seriously she took her role, as if every decision, the exact height of a swing, the color of a wall, was vital to Root House's success. "It's perfect," she finally approved. "The chains are long, enough to swing really high." Marcos approached, holding a clipboard and wearing the white hard hat of a supervisor. "Good morning, Mancini family," he greeted with a smile. "We have new things to show today. The music room's acoustic treatment is ready, and the library got its first set of shelves." The library was one of Leah's favorite areas. Ever since she'd learned to read with Helena's help, she'd developed a passion for books that amazed everyone. "Every kid needs stories to escape," she once said, with a maturity that occasionally emerged in her childlike world. As they walked through the growing building, Enzo noted how Leah interacted with the space. She didn't just look. She touched the walls, paced out distances, tilted her head to see how light entered through the windows at different angles, gestures she had picked up by watching him. "The kitchen needs to be bigger," she declared, upon entering what would be the heart of the house. "Kids need to help make meals, it's important." Marcos glanced at Enzo, who nodded. "We can adjust," the supervisor confirmed, taking notes. "Maybe combine part of the pantry? And we need long tables," Leah continued, spreading her arms, "so everyone can eat together." After inspecting every corner, Leah opened her folder and started handing out drawings to the workers. It was a ritual she'd invented. Each Saturday, new pictures to inspire the crew. The workers cherished these little gifts. Some pinned them. On the temporary site offices, others took them home. "This one's for you, Jorge," she said, offering a colorful drawing of a strong man building a house. "It's you working on Root House." The foreman, A rough man who'd supervised countless corporate structures accepted the paper as though it were a diploma. "I'll frame it, Miss Leah, just like I did with all the others." While she continued distributing her gifts, Enzo conferred with Marcos about the necessary adjustments and timeline. The grand opening was scheduled in 2 weeks, not a big formal event with politicians and cameras. Enzo had declined several media coverage offers. It would be a modest gathering focused on the children who would be the first residents. "Is the team fully hired?" he asked, referring to those who would run the house day to day. "All set," Marcos confirmed. "Psychologists, educators, caretakers, volunteer doctors on rotation. We made sure to hire people with real experience in vulnerable children's lives." Enzo nodded, satisfied. From the start, he insisted Root House wouldn't just be a building but a complete support system, not just to shelter kids but to transform lives. At noon, with the sun overhead, Enzo suggested a break. They had brought a small picnic, a tradition that began spontaneously after the first visits. They sat under a nearby tree on a blanket, eating sandwiches Helena had packed and drinking juice boxes, another ritual they'd kept from that first snack. "What do you think?" Enzo asked, watching Leah nibble her sandwich thoughtfully. "It's almost ready," she replied, eyes on the building. "It looks like a place I'd want to live." The simplicity of her statement held the project's highest validation. After lunch, they continued the tour. Every space was designed with the physical and emotional needs of children carrying hard stories. Cozy rooms, but not cramped. Common areas encouraging interaction, but offering quiet corners for solitude. Therapy rooms that didn't feel cold like clinics, but warm spaces of support. "This will be the art room," Marcos explained, showing them a wide space with large windows facing the garden. "Lots of natural light, just like you requested." Leah walked around the empty space, already picturing possibilities. Her fingers traced the windowsill's edge. "We'll need lots of colors," she decided. "All the colors there are." By late afternoon, as the sun began its descent, the visit wound down. Most workers had left, leaving the site strangely silent. Enzo and Leah did one last walk through, just the two of them, their footsteps echoing in a building soon to be filled with children's voices, laughter, tears, and stories. They stopped at the main entrance wall, still bare, waiting for the mural that would feature Leah's drawing enlarged, a tree with deep roots and children in its branches. "Tomorrow the artists will start transferring your drawing to the wall," Enzo explained. "It'll be the first thing the kids see when they arrive." Leah looked at the wall, then at Enzo, her expression suddenly serious. "Do you think those kids will have the same luck I had with you?" The question caught Enzo off guard, not for its content, but for its emotional depth. He remembered every step of their journey. The first meeting at the diner, her cardboard shelter collapsing in the rain, that tiny hand clinging to his with suspicion, her fever, the midnight promise, the adoption papers finally arriving. He knelt down to her level, as he always did when the conversation was important. "Now they have you too, Leah," he replied gently. A slow smile lit up her face, understanding the weight of his words. It wasn't just Enzo who'd changed Leah's life. Leah had changed his, inspiring him to create that place, to open his world beyond the concrete walls of silence he had built around himself. Without saying more, they continued walking through the building that was both an architectural realization and a personal transformation. Of all the structures Enzo had created, and there were dozens, some internationally recognized, none carried as much meaning as this one, built brick by brick with help from the child who taught him to see beyond facades. On their way out, Leah paused for one more look at Root House, its silhouette outlined against the orange sky. In a spontaneous gesture, she held out her hand to Enzo, who took it without hesitation. A simple gesture repeated hundreds of times in recent months, yet it never lost its significance: trust, safety, belonging. "Shall we bring more drawings tomorrow?" she asked as they walked back to the car. "As many as you want," Enzo replied, knowing her blue folder would be full again by morning. On the drive home, Leah dozed off in the back seat, as she often did after intense days at the site. Enzo adjusted the rearview mirror to glance at her. Her sleeping face was the picture of security, something that not long ago had been a foreign luxury to her. In 2 weeks, Root House would open its doors. Not just a building, but a manifesto shaped in the form of a home. A statement that other children could find the same chance Leah had found. Not necessarily being adopted, as she had been, but having a safe place to grow, learn, and dream. When they arrived home, Enzo carried Leah inside, her slight weight against his chest a constant reminder of the responsibility he had taken on and the unexpected joy that came with it. "How was the visit?" Helena whispered, meeting them in the hallway. "The house is almost ready," Enzo replied also quietly. "So are we." As he carried Leah to her room, Enzo pondered the double meaning of his own words. Root House and the family he and Leah had formed shared the same journey, from empty, silent structures to spaces brimming with purpose and life. In the room now decorated with vibrant colors, so unlike the minimalism that once dominated his apartment, he laid Leah on her bed. She barely stirred, worn out from the day. She only shifted enough to hug her patched-up teddy bear, ever present since her days on the street. Before leaving, Enzo tucked the blanket around her, taking a moment to observe the room that symbolized so many changes. The drawings on the walls, the books on the shelves, the toys neatly stored in colorful bins, a whole new world built in less than a year, so different from the orderly emptiness his life had been. Like Root House, he and Leah had built something new together, piece by piece. And like the mural soon to grace the entryway of the house, it had deep roots and branches that reached the sky, room to grow in directions neither of them could predict, but which they would explore together. The opening day arrived with a perfect blue sky, as if even the weather wished to celebrate. Finally complete, Root House gleamed under the sunlight, not as an institution but as the home it was designed to be. The exterior walls, painted in soft yellows and terracotta, stood out against wooden details and large glass windows. The newly planted garden promised flowers and shade in the coming months. From early morning, volunteers and staff bustled around, making final adjustments. Tables laden with colorful snacks filled the central courtyard. Yellow balloons, Leah's chosen color for the house, bobbed at key spots. A red ribbon stretched across the front entrance, awaiting the symbolic cutting. At Enzo's apartment, the morning started even earlier than usual. Leah had woken before sunrise, too excited to sleep. Now she was in her bedroom, where Helena was helping her get ready for the ceremony. "Just stand still a bit longer," Helena pleaded, adjusting a yellow bow on the white dress Leah had chosen especially for the occasion. "I can't," Leah replied, practically bouncing. "I'm too excited." In the living room, Enzo waited, uncharacteristically nervous. He wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, but no tie, a concession to the informality that now permeated his life. In recent days, he'd mulled over how to handle the opening. He wanted something worthy of Root House's importance, but not so grand as to alienate the very children meant to live there. "We're ready," Helena announced, entering the living room with Leah. Enzo turned and felt his heart skip a beat. Leah looked radiant in her white dress, the yellow bow matching her shoes. Her blonde curls fell softly around a face flushed with excitement. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "You look handsome too," she replied, twirling to show off her dress. Like a real dad going to an important party. The simplicity of that observation struck him. A real dad. That's what he had become, not just on paper, but in every fiber of his being. When they arrived at Root House, the site was already filled with people. Staff, volunteers, a few representatives from social services, and most importantly, the first children to be welcomed there. 10 boys and girls of various ages, all from vulnerable situations, watched the scene with the same mix of distrust and hope Enzo had once seen in Leah's eyes on her first night in his apartment. Marcos approached, smiling broadly. "Everything's ready," he said. "Whenever you want to begin." Enzo glanced at Leah, who was gripping his hand tightly, suddenly anxious with so many people around. "Ready?" he asked softly. She nodded, taking a deep breath like he'd taught her for moments of nervousness. The brief ceremony began with minimal formality. Enzo gave a short speech about the origins and purpose of Root House, never mentioning explicitly the personal story that inspired it all. Then a few representatives from social service agencies spoke about the importance of such initiatives. Among The guests, Teresa, the social worker who oversaw Leah's adoption, watched with shining eyes. When her gaze met Enzo's, she gave a small wave, a gesture that carried approval and respect. She had witnessed not only the transformation of a child, but of a man. Jorge, the construction foreman, was there with his family, proudly sporting a nice shirt likely reserved for special occasions, calloused hands out in plain view like medals of honor for building something that truly mattered. Finally, the awaited moment arrived. Enzo and Leah positioned themselves by the red ribbon at the main entrance. A hush fell over the small crowd. "Root House doesn't belong to me," Enzo said, his voice clear in the morning air. "It's not a corporate project or a typical institution. It's a place that belongs to those who need it most." He paused, looking at Leah, and no one understands that need better than someone who's been on the other side. With those words, he handed the scissors to Leah. She accepted them with the solemnity of someone who grasped the gravity of the moment. Carefully, she lined them up, adjusted her yellow bow one last time, and cut the red ribbon with determination. Applause erupted. Yellow balloons were released into the sky. But the true moment of impact came when the doors fully opened, revealing the main hall and, on its largest wall, the mural Leah had created. The tree she'd drawn, now enlarged and vibrantly colored, showed deep roots and branches extended like welcoming arms. Among the branches, small figures represented children of all colors and ages. And below, in large, colorful letters, the phrase she had written, "For anyone still waiting to be seen." There was a collective hush, the kind that happens when something touches people deeply. Then, as if waking from a spell, everyone began to enter, to explore, to marvel at every detail. The children, who would be the first residents, were led by their caregivers, seeing for the first time their new home. Leah, initially shy, soon joined, them taking on the role of host with surprising ease. "This is the library," she explained, showing the room she had helped design. "There are books of all kinds. You can take them to your room too." Each corner of Root House carried Enzo and Leah's collaborative mark. Bedrooms, smaller and cozier than institutional standards, each had its own personality. Some with a forest theme, others like the ocean, others like outer space. Yet they all shared the same essential features: wide windows facing green areas, comfortable beds and space for personal belongings. The music room, filled with various instruments and perfect acoustics, already attracted some children. A boy about 9 tentatively tapped a drum, his eyes widening at the sound reverberating through the space. A volunteer sat at a piano and began a soft melody, drawing other children in like moths to a flame. Enzo watched from a distance, his heart full. Leah's metamorphosis, from a scared child sleeping on cardboard to this confident little person guiding others, was perhaps the clearest proof of love's transformative power. The Root House team, psychologists, educators, caregivers, mingled, with children and visitors, setting the tone of warmth that would define the place. One psychologist eyed Leah with professional curiosity, clearly impressed by her resilience and knack for connecting with others. "She's really special," the psychologist remarked to Enzo when he approached. "She has a natural intuition for what other kids need." Enzo nodded, proud but not surprised. Leah's empathy was always her superpower, perhaps honed by the hardships she faced so early on. As the day wore on, the formal structure of the ceremony gave way to a more relaxed celebration. Soft music played through the garden speakers. The snack tables were restocked. Children and adults roamed the building, each finding their place in this budding community. By late afternoon, as guests started to leave, Enzo found Leah sitting on one of the tall swings she'd been so adamant about, swings high enough to see the sky. "How was the big day?" he asked, taking a seat on the adjacent swing. She swayed gently, looking up at the sky, which was now turning the colors of dusk. "It was the second best day of my life," she answered thoughtfully. "Which was the first?" She smiled, a smile that lit up everything around her. "The day you took me home, silly." Enzo laughed, swaying in sync with her. Of all the meetings, presentations, and events he had ever led, none had been as meaningful as this. Root House wasn't just a perfectly executed project, but a tangible symbol of how love can build bridges where only voids existed before. In the weeks that followed, a new routine took shape. Leah continued her school life, growing increasingly absorbed in art and literature. Her drawings grew more complex. Her invented stories filled entire notebooks. Enzo showed genuine interest in each new project, sitting on the floor of his newly remodeled home office, now half workspace, half art corner for Leah, to draw alongside her or listen to her stories. Leah's teachers often praised her artistic talent and remarkable expression for her age. "She has a very unique worldview," her art teacher told Enzo during a parent-teacher meeting, "as if she's lived more than her years." At night, a new ritual took place. Leah wrote in a diary, decorated with gold stars. "I'm saving all the important stories," she explained to Enzo, "to always remember how we got here." On weekends, they visited Root House together. Enzo offered introductory architecture workshops, teaching older kids how to draw and build simple models. Seeing these children, many from extremely vulnerable situations, discovering they too could create and build, brought him a sense of fulfillment that dwarfed any professional award. Leah, meanwhile, made friends with the other kids, sharing her pencils and invented stories. She had a special talent for reaching the newly arrived children, those who still wore the haunted look of fear and distrust she once had. "How do you get them to trust you so quickly?" Enzo asked once, watching her play with a girl who'd arrived just 2 days prior and hadn't spoken to anyone yet. "I remember what it's like," Leah said simply. "It's easier to trust someone who's been where you are." The impact of Root House began reaching beyond its walls. Other social service centers got in touch, interested in the model. Local newspapers ran discreet articles. Professionals in the field visited, curious to see the approach. Enzo welcomed them openly, sharing plans, ideas, successes, and challenges. His vision wasn't just to build a single place, but to inspire broader change in how society cared for its most vulnerable children. One particularly sunny Sunday, they decided to have a picnic in the institution's garden. The young greenery offered sparse shade under newly planted trees. They spread a checkered blanket on the grass, unpacked sandwiches, fruit, homemade muffins, and, of course, juice boxes. Sitting side by side, they watched the other children play. Some recently arrived still carried distrust in their eyes. Others who'd been there longer showed the first signs of restored confidence. Root House's garden was flourishing, just like its little inhabitants. Freshly planted flowers were budding. Young trees grew stronger each day. Formerly wounded children began to smile again. It was an ecosystem of healing and growth. "I remember when you took me home that rainy night," Leah said, suddenly nibbling on an apple slice. "I was scared you'd send me away the next day." Enzo felt a pang, recalling the vulnerability of those early days. "What did you think when you first saw my apartment?" he asked, curious about her perception of those initial moments. Leah considered the question, tilting her head the way she did when thinking deeply. "I thought it was a castle," she finally answered with a small smile. "But it was too quiet, and way too white. I was afraid of messing something up." Enzo chuckled, remembering his old self, the man obsessed with order and silence, living in a perfectly arranged, utterly empty space. "And now, what do you think?" "Now it's a real home," she said confidently, with drawings on the fridge, toys and noise. Enzo nodded, thinking how his apartment had transformed with him, from a pristine, impersonal space to a living home. "What about you?" Leah turned the question around. "What did you think when you saw me the first time?" Her question surprised him. They'd never really discussed that initial encounter at the diner's door. "I thought you were very brave," he replied honestly. "Asking a stranger for help, saying those difficult words. A lot of adults wouldn't have that courage." Leah seemed satisfied with his answer. Then she fixed him with that intense look that sometimes shone in her childlike eyes. "And now?" she asked. Enzo looked around, at the flourishing garden, the kids playing, the root house they had built. Then he looked at Leah, at the extraordinary person she was becoming. "And now we're a real family, right?" she asked, though her tone indicated she already knew. Enzo smiled, a calm, contented smile. "Yes, Leah, we built this together." She smiled back, resting her head on his arm, watching the other children run across the garden. In the distance, a new girl just arrived, observed from afar, too shy to join in. Her large, wary eyes reminded Enzo of Leah's that first day. "I think I'll invite her to play," Leah decided, standing up. Before she ran off, she turned to Enzo once more. "That's what families do, right? Help other people not to be alone." As he watched her run toward the lonely girl, Enzo felt a deep sense of emotion. Root House started as a project inspired by Leah. Now it was also a space where she could give back, sharing the safety and love she'd found. On the horizon, the sun began its slow descent, casting a golden light over the garden. Shadows stretched out, soft and welcoming, like the arms of Leah's painted tree. Children laughed, adults chatted in low voices, birds sang in the young trees. A scene that, not too long ago, would have been entirely foreign to Enzo's life. One of the caregivers approached, stopping respectfully a few steps away. "Mr. Mancini, I just wanted to say what you've done here is extraordinary. We've been getting calls from other social service centers, wanting to learn about the model and maybe replicate it." Enzo nodded, grateful. The thought that Root House might inspire other similar projects and that more children could find safety like Leah was profoundly rewarding. "It wasn't just my idea," he replied, watching Leah lead the shy girl by the hand to the tall swings. It was a joint creation. On the drive home, they rode in comfortable silence, while Leah flipped through a new book she'd received from a volunteer at the house. Every so often, she lifted her eyes to the passing scenery outside, as if absorbing everything. "You know what I like best about Root House?" she suddenly asked. "What's that?" Enzo replied, meeting her gaze in the rearview mirror. "That nobody is invisible there," she said with that occasional wisdom. "Everyone is seen, being seen." Wasn't that the deepest longing of every human being? Wasn't that what Leah sought that very first day, when she asked a stranger for a snack? Wasn't that what he himself, without realizing it, had also craved in his silent, perfect apartment? The life they had built together. Enzo, the architect used to concrete and silence, and Leah, the girl who slept on cardboard, was living proof that the most profound transformations start with simple gestures, offering a meal, providing shelter. In the rain, keeping a promise. There was no magic in their story, only choices, small but consistent ones. The choice to stop and notice a child asking for help. The choice to open up an organized life to the chaotic, transformative force of love. The choice to build, brick by brick, a family where there had been only loneliness, and with it, a place so that other children might finally be seen by those who are still waiting. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.